Look, I appreciate the offer, but I'd really rather do this on my own.
No can do, Sugar Cube. We sure ain't letting any friend of ours go into that creepy place alone. We're sticking to you like caramel on a candy apple.
Did you guys see that? Here, let me play it again, but slower.
We're sticking to you like caramel on a candy apple.
Did you catch it this time? This is a pop quiz for all of my fellow MLP fans. What's wrong with this scene? It's not an animation error or anything, but it definitely is an error of some sort. If you have no idea, keep watching. Hello everyone, my name's Ayla Bell, and before you guys form an angry mob from the title alone, let me just say that My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, the 4th generation of the MLP franchise, is my favorite show of all time. Starlight Glimmer is best pony, I will die on this hill, please watch my Starlight video. I jumped on board in 2011 before Season 2 premiered. Don't worry, I binged Season 1, and faithfully watched until the series finale. Even while watching as an adult, MLP taught me more about friendship than any other medium, or heck, life circumstances ever did, and I think it bettered me as a person. The show helped me grow in wisdom, all while being a joy to watch and experience. The animation only gets better season by season, the art style is fun, cute, and expressive, the humor mostly on point, the songs phenomenal, the story and lore engaging, and the characters have a lot of depth. I even enjoyed the weaker episodes and episodes that many consider are bad. With over 200 episodes, I can only count on one hand the amount of episodes I didn't like, and I think that's quite an achievement. I cannot recommend this show enough to people of all ages. Having said that, MLP FIM is not a perfect show, and like many shows, had a rougher pilot episode and didn't quite have everything figured out from the jump. This is perfectly understandable, and I still had fun with the show's premiere, but regardless, it still has its errors, and that's what we are going to look at today. This review is not me discussing everything wrong with Friendship is Magic as a whole, it is quite literally me looking at the first 2 episodes of the show, also entitled Friendship is Magic Parts 1 and 2. I will not be pointing out animation errors, but story and characterization errors / inconsistencies that would be fixed or changed later on and more legitimately canonized. So this is my disclaimer. I acknowledge that this is the pilot of the show, and things often change from the pilot as the show goes on. So inconsistencies are a common thing. Nevertheless, this pilot is canon to the show, as its events kick off the plot and is even referenced in later episodes. And so it will be fun to look at what changes were made in the story of Friendship is Magic as a whole, and how these changes could be applied to a revised pilot that takes into account the canon elements to come. I've been wanting to make this video for a long time, so I'm excited to finally start. But before we get into it, special thanks to Stealthy Pumpkin, Tunbin, and my other channel members for supporting me and my channel. If you want to support me as well and keep this channel alive, you too can become a channel member by clicking join, donate on Ko-fi, or commission me for a chibi on Artistry. Links down below. Oh, and just as a heads up, for a video like this, spoilers are unfortunately inevitable. I'll try to keep them light, but I can't make any promises. Alright, so if you're prepared, let's watch the episodes together. Well, you know, within reason. I obviously can't show the full episodes, but we'll do our best.
Once upon a time, in the magical land of Equestria, there were 2 regal sisters who ruled together and created harmony for all the land. To do this, the eldest used her unicorn powers to raise the sun at dawn.
For those who don't know, in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, these creatures with horns and wings are called alicorns. The writers of MLP didn't invent the word alicorn for winged unicorns. It's been around for quite a few years, but they did popularize the term as it used to be very obscure. So if you see the term alicorn being used outside of the context of MLP, you can in fact thank MLP for making it more mainstream. Having said that, in the context of MLP, an alicorn is more than simply a winged unicorn. It is a being that is a combination of the 3 main pony races: Earth ponies, unicorns, and Pegasi. Funnily enough, the show doesn't say the word alicorn for quite a while into its run. In fact, it wasn't until the Season 3 episode Magic Duel that the term was used. Despite the lack of the word, the show had 2 alicorns in it from the very beginning, as you see here. Technically 3, but we don't know about her until the end of Season 2. So, for the record, the older sister is using her alicorn powers to raise the sun, not her unicorn powers.
But Aloe, if alicorns are a combination of all 3 pony races, then technically isn't she using unicorn powers?
Honestly, if you want to make that argument, I won't stop you or tremendously disagree with you. But still, technically no. Alicorns are not unicorns, so she is using her alicorn powers. And also, the show goes out of its way at some point to mention that alicorns specifically have alicorn magic, so, you know. No, actually. They are not using unicorn powers, they are using alicorn powers.
But Aloe, weren't Celestia and Luna unicorns when they were younger and ascended into alicorns?
That may or may not have been the original intention of their origins, but I think that was retconned or changed as the show went on. Honestly, that info is a little blurry as the show itself never fully touched on the subject. Alluded to, maybe, but never committed to it. So the biggest answer is we don't know. Maybe they were born alicorns, maybe they weren't. And I don't want anyone to bring up when Celestia said, "The birth of an alicorn is something that Equestria has never seen," with Luna's follow-up of, "It is beyond even our understanding," argument, because Celestia and Luna were born before Equestria even existed. Besides, there's a chance that they don't even know the specifics of their own birth. This will honestly probably just remain an MLP mystery forever. Unless it's covered in the comics, then you know, fair enough, but at the same time, I hold the canonicity of the comics very loosely. But to add to my point regarding this opening narration, later on in this intro, the narrator says that the younger sister was actually a unicorn, when in fact, she wasn't. By the time the whole Nightmare Moon being banished situation occurred, the sisters were both alicorns. So the narrator calling their magic unicorn magic is still incorrect. The show just didn't have the term for alicorn yet. Let's fast forward a bit through the episode.
The elder sister tried to reason with her, but the bitterness in the young one's heart had transformed her into a wicked mare of darkness, Nightmare Moon. Using the magic of the elements of harmony, she defeated her younger sister and banished her permanently in the moon.
Keep in mind that the narrator mentions how these 2 alicorns are sisters. The main character, Twilight Sparkle, even personally knows one of them. So, let's put a pin in this detail.
Oh, sorry, girls. I got a lot of studying to catch up on.
Does that pony do anything except study?
I think she's more interested in books than friends.
Okay, so I know that this line is just said to establish Twilight's character and motivations, but we see these 3 ponies again in the Season 5 episode of Mending Fences, where Twilight goes to reconcile with her old Canterlot friends. In that episode, it's implied that the 3 of them weren't salty at all about Twilight's dismissal of them, and they just chalk that up to Twilight being Twilight. They've known each other since they were fillies, so they knew her tendencies. They knew she wasn't a warm individual. So, in retrospect, and to be more canonically accurate, I think this line should have been read with a more melancholic tone, with Twinkleshine saying something like, "I guess we shouldn't be surprised. She always chooses studying over hanging out with us. At least we tried," instead of the snippy remark we got.
But Aloe, maybe Twinkleshine, Lemon Hearts, and Minuet were fed up with Twilight's behavior after trying to reach her for so many years, and this was just their breaking point. Minuet even mentioned later on that it stung a little when Twilight left Canterlot without saying goodbye. So maybe Twinkleshine's comment was a part of some bigger feelings we weren't aware of. Also, of course they weren't going to tell the Princess of Friendship that they were mad at her for abandoning them. They were trying to get on her good side.
Yeah, maybe. I suppose this is up for interpretation. But anyway, we move on. So, Twilight's magic, and the magic of the alicorns and unicorns in general. Starting in Season 2, the aura color of the magic is a lot more vibrant and matches the color of one's cutie mark, and in some rare cases, eye color. Whereas in the first season, most magic was just a much paler color that matched with the pony's color palette, along with some really obvious sparkles.
The Mare and the Moon, myth from olden pony times. A powerful pony who wanted to rule Equestria, defeated by the elements of harmony and imprisoned in the moon. Legend has it that on the longest day of the 1000th year, the stars will aid in her escape, and she will bring about nighttime eternal.
So, who wrote this prophecy? It couldn't have been Star Swirl the Bearded, as he and his companions were in limbo at this point, so I can only imagine it was Celestia, since she can low-key see into the future somewhat. In fact, I'm almost sure it was Celestia.
She said to check on preparations. I am her student, and I'll do my royal duty, but the fate of Equestria does not rest on me making friends. Thank you, sirs.
I cannot ignore the neighing ponies. I mean, it makes sense that they neigh, but it would have made more sense if they spoke. It feels like they only had one male voice actor in the studio that day and didn't want to use him for these Royal Guard ponies. Oh well, I guess. Next we meet Pinkie Pie. Sorta. And then Applejack, Rainbow Dash, and Rarity. But no major oopsies happen here. Quick note about Rarity, though, is her horn. The horn looks like it's detachable, such as on a toy, as seen with the ring at the base of it. Whereas later on in the show, horns look more natural, like they are actually protruding from the head instead of just laying there on top of it. This is more of a stylistic choice than an oopsie, but again, this review is pointing out things that aren't consistent with the show when it was more established.
I'm Fluttershy.
I'm sorry, what was that?
My name is Fluttershy.
Didn't quite catch that.
And now we meet Fluttershy, the second best pony of the show. We'll be bringing her up again later.
I should throw a great big ginormous super duper spectacular welcome party and invite everyone in Ponyville! See? And now you have lots and lots of friends!
It's party time, and we finally officially meet Pinkie Pie. Oh, and look at that, all of our main characters are in one place for the first time. Isn't that nice? I guess this is as good a place as ever to talk about this. In the Season 7 episode Celestial Advice, we find out that Celestia knew about the friend group of Pinkie, Rarity, Applejack, Fluttershy, and Rainbow Dash before she ever sent Twilight to Ponyville. She sent Twilight there specifically so that she could meet and befriend these specific ponies. Celestia notes how such amazing friends they were, and how good of an influence they would be on Twilight. Them already being an established group of friends checks out in this shot, as well as later on after Nightmare Moon shows up, and these 5 immediately go to check on and eventually help Twilight on her journey. If they weren't already an established group of friends, then doing these things doesn't make a ton of sense, given some of them only really spoke to Twilight for about 5 minutes prior to said mission. They wouldn't have built the rapport with her to accompany her on such a journey. But since they were all friends with one another, they logically could have compared notes with one another and realized that they all met Twilight individually, and perhaps wanted to make her a part of their group. This is all well and good, until you take some Season 1 episodes into account. Rarity and Applejack didn't seem to get along that well before the episode Look Before You Sleep, and Rainbow Dash thought that Pinkie Pie was annoying and didn't seem to like hanging out with her up until Griffin the Brush-Off. Even further with Rainbow Dash, although being childhood friends with Fluttershy, had relatively low patience with her and lacked respect for her fears. It's hard to believe this group of friends were really that tightly knit with such tensions going on before Twilight came around. You could make the argument that Celestia knew this wasn't a perfect group of friends and thought that Twilight would be as good of an influence on them as they would be with her, but I'm sorry, the way that the princess described their friendship in Season 7 seemed like they were totally all good with one another and just the best of friends, when in fact, they were not. She knew they could be, but they weren't there yet. I don't know. I guess it would have been cool in the premiere to see some of these initial tensions and get them worked out as the episodes came along.
You really should lighten up, Twilight. It's a party!
There's nothing wrong here. I just love sassy Twilight. I honestly miss the little attitude she used to have. Yes, I understand character development, but I found this Twilight exceptionally entertaining. Now let's skip to Nightmare Moon's appearance.
Oh no! Nightmare Moon!
Oh no, a villain! Whatever shall we do?
Oh, my beloved subjects. It's been so long since I've seen your precious little sun-loving face.
Ooh, this shot right here. Okay, let's chat about it. These three ponies are Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo. They eventually become best friends and form a group called the Cutie Mark Crusaders. But at this point in time, these three do not know each other and have never met before until the Season 1 episode Call of the Cutie. Call of the Cutie suggests that maybe Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo know each other, but Apple Bloom has never met them before. When you think about it, it's kind of weird that Sweetie and Apple Bloom don't at least know each other when Rarity and Applejack, their respective older sisters, have supposedly been good friends for a while. Not only that, but of all the main six, Rarity and AJ are the only ones who grew up in Ponyville and have always lived there, minus the short time that AJ lived in Manhattan. But if you consider that AJ and Rarity didn't like each other initially, as I said before, then it makes more sense for Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle to never have met. But as we see in this first episode of the entire show, the group that will eventually be known as the CMC are huddled together as they cower in fear from Nightmare Moon. But in Call of the Cutie, it's as if they've never seen each other before. Sounds like a slight retcon to me. And it's not like there were other fillies around for them to mingle with, though there should have been because it was a big celebration that all of Ponyville was celebrating, so that's another issue in itself. More of an animation thing than anything. These three seem to be the only kids, again that's weird, but anyway, and usually kids flock towards other kids. So for them to not at least be acquainted by the time Call of the Cutie happens is weird.
But Aloe, there is, regardless, still a chance that they didn't see each other until this moment as they were all hiding from Nightmare Moon. They could have coincidentally just hid in the same place and didn't necessarily meet one another in a formal sense until Call of the Cutie.
Sure, that could be an explanation, but I still say there are some inconsistencies here. And since we're still on the topic of the CMC, these three girls go to the same school, seemingly the only school in Ponyville. This school has only one room, one teacher, and less than 20 students. What's weirder is that in Call of the Cutie, we don't see Sweetie Belle or Scootaloo in class, but after Call of the Cutie, they are in the same class. It's not like Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle don't live in Ponyville. They do. They live with their families. So why weren't they in school? How do they not know Apple Bloom? After rattling my brain about this dilemma, I came to a potential solution. Rarity and Sweetie Belle's parents like to go on vacation. Maybe they go on vacation a lot, and perhaps they'd bring Sweetie Belle with them, making her miss a lot of school. And we eventually, in Season 9, find out that Scootaloo's parents travel a lot as well for their work, so maybe they'd bring Scootaloo along with them, causing her to miss a lot of school as well. If both she and Sweetie Belle were away from Ponyville, that would explain them not being at school, and it would also somewhat explain them being present for the first episode, since they were in town celebrating the Summer Sun Celebration, which is an important holiday for the ponies. And then after that holiday, they'd go off and travel with their parents again. This is quite literally the only logical explanation I can come up with as to why and how these three only just became friends in Call of the Cutie. Anyway, moving on to Friendship is Magic Part 2, the second episode of the series.
Seize her! Only she knows where the princess is!
Stand back, you fools!
The Royal Guard continues to be useless. Good to know that never changes.
Come back here!
Nighttime? Forever?
Nightmare Moon gets away, and somehow the fastest flyer in Equestria can't catch up with her. Alright, sure.
There are 6 elements of harmony, but only 5 are known. Kindness, laughter, generosity, honesty, and loyalty.
Alright, here's the next big thing that bugs me about this premiere. This part probably annoys me more than literally everything else. This is singularly the only part of the premiere that treats the audience like they are babies or like they lack the intelligence to figure things out on their own. This moment is rivaled only by Starlight's evil monologue into the camera during the Season 5 premiere. Twilight lists the elements of harmony. That part is fine. But what's not fine is the camera panning to each individual pony as the elements are listed, immediately giving away who gets what element. More than that, it gives away the fact that the ponies embody the elements rather than the elements just being some magical items that could be used by anyone. Sure, maybe that particular fact is obvious to many who have seen or read similar stories, but it would have at least been fun to figure out who got what as the episode went on. I don't want to be told at first what the main character's characteristics are. I want to be shown. Show us their feats, and then reveal what element they are. All of this could have been avoided if the camera just stayed on Twilight or simply did a collective group shot when she mentioned the elements instead of spelling it out like we're 5.
But hello, many of the audience members are 5 years old, or around that age. Did you forget who this show was aimed towards at the beginning of its run?
Regardless, my point still stands. This could help kids with their inductive reasoning skills, which I think is important to build in such young minds. Anyway, it's time to head off on our journey to defeat Nightmare Moon.
Look, I appreciate the offer, but I'd really rather do this on my own.
No can do, Sugar Cube. We sure ain't letting any friend of ours go into that creepy place alone. We're sticking to you like caramel on a candy apple.
And now we come to the subject of our quiz from the beginning. What is wrong with this scene? I'll give you a hint. It has to do with Fluttershy. If you answered, Season 1 Fluttershy would never willingly nor happily go into the Everfree Forest, you'd be correct. Fluttershy, as we later see, is terrified of the Everfree Forest. She eventually gets over it, but not this early on. And when Fluttershy is too scared to do something, it is quite difficult to get her to do that thing. The fact that none of these ponies had to drag her along or manipulate her into going in there seems so vastly incorrect towards her characterization. She's terrified of Nightmare Moon, is frightened of the Everfree Forest, and is quite literally scared of her own shadow. And even if you are miraculously able to somehow convince her to go headfirst into a scary situation, she 100% would not be trotting into said situation with a carefree smile on her face. She would be whimpering, shaking, and maybe even attempting, and probably failing, to give herself a pep talk. There is no scenario where she heads into the unknown completely chill with everything. You might be able to make a similar argument with Rarity, who, this early on in the story, doesn't like nor tolerate getting messy or dirty, which can absolutely happen in an unpredictable forest. Her going into the forest without boots or some kind of clothing to protect her well-groomed self does seem a bit off, but I'm willing to give Rarity a slight pass as, 1, Rarity, despite what she says and how she acts, is relatively more open to new experiences with her friends and is more adventurous than Fluttershy, and 2, it seems to be easier to convince her to put aside her desire to stay well kept for the sake of the greater good than it is to get Fluttershy to participate in something scary that doesn't involve animals. And I'm not saying that Fluttershy doesn't also have that sense of doing what's needed for the greater good. She absolutely does. She just needs more convincing and pep talk in order to go through with it. Or she needs her friends to be in danger for her to step up. And even if she does go through with whatever it is, she'll still be taking very careful steps, yelping and hiding any chance she gets. Again, unless her friends are in direct danger, in which case she'll get quite assertive. In the next scene, we have Rainbow Dash inappropriately scaring her friends on a potentially life or death mission.
You know why? Rainbow quit it. 'Cause every pony who's ever come in has never come.
The part that bugs me here is Pinkie Pie. She's shivering with fear from Rainbow's story, which doesn't add up to what happens only several minutes later, when Pinkie Pie is quite literally the only one laughing in a scary situation. Pinkie will go on to show the others that she's learned to laugh at scary situations to make them not so scary anymore. So the fact that she's not immediately resorting to that here when it's part of her characterization not a few minutes later is weird. I'm not saying that Pinkie Pie is never afraid of anything. It was just a weird choice in sequence of events in this particular episode. You can make the argument, though, that Pinkie might be pretending to be scared, as evidenced in the Season 2 episode Luna Eclipsed, when she pretended being scared of Princess Luna for the fun of it. In which case, fine. Moving on to Applejack's honesty trial. It's the weakest trial of everyone's, in my opinion, as it doesn't show her element off that well.
Let go.
Are you crazy?
No, I ain't. I promise you'll be safe.
That's not true.
Now listen here. What I'm saying to you is the honest truth. Let go, and you'll be safe.
I think there was a better way for us to see that she's an honest pony instead of what we got here. Twilight was scared of falling, and AJ told her to let go because she'd be alright. This is dumb because AJ could have just told Twilight that the Pegasi in their group would catch her. Instead, AJ had to be cryptic and keep Twilight feeling scared. Instead, they should have put AJ in a situation where she could have lied to maybe protect someone's feelings, but chose to tell the truth, but in a gentle way, causing Twilight to respect her. I can only imagine Applejack's trial was the weirdest because it's kind of hard to conceptualize how to properly utilize her virtue in the situation they were dealing with in regards to Nightmare Moon, so I should probably give it some slack. But still. Now let's chat about Giggle at the Ghostly. Very cute song, very fun moment. It is very appropriately Pinkie Pie. Question though, at what point was Pinkie Pie given the advice to laugh at scary things by her Granny Pie? Because if it's any time before she got her cutie mark, we have a problem. Because Pinkie never smiled before that, as told to us in the Season 1 episode, The Cutie Mark Chronicles. It wasn't until Pinkie saw the rainbow from the Sonic Rainboom as a filly that she smiled for the first time. But if Granny Pie told her to laugh, then that means Pinkie Pie has smiled before. I mean, I guess there's a chance that Granny Pie told her to laugh, but Pinkie Pie never did until after she got her cutie mark. That's totally possible. But if we're not going with that scenario, then this whole thing could also mean that Pinkie somehow didn't meet her grandmother until after getting her cutie mark, which I guess is possible. But then we have to consider that Granny Pie is the parent to probably Pinkie's father, Igneous Rock Pie, who is a very stoic individual. To have a mother who was potentially like Pinkie and still grow up to be super serious and stoic is actually reasonable. Kids don't always reflect their parents. Just because the mom was super bubbly doesn't have to mean the son will be. Maybe it's their differences in ideologies that caused them to not speak for years, making it so that she never met her grandkids until after Pinkie brought happiness to the rock farm. This is headcanon territory at this point, but it does all make you wonder. I really wish we got to meet Granny Pie at some point. Oh well. Alright, we're nearing the climax of the episode. We'll pass on Rarity and Rainbow's trials, nothing wrong here. We're now at the castle of the two sisters. And we'll ignore how stupid it was for the friends to completely leave Twilight during what's arguably the most important part of their mission. What was it that Applejack said? We're sticking to you like caramel on a candy apple. Giving her space is fine. Completely planning to leave is not. Whatever. Twilight versus Nightmare Moon. Cool. Nightmare Moon destroys the spheres. Twilight realizes the magic of friendship. All well and good. They defeat Nightmare Moon. Celestia is free and congratulates Twilight and her friends. Celestia then confronts Luna, formerly known as Nightmare Moon.
I have seen you like this. Time to put our differences behind us. We were meant to rule together, little sister.
Sister?
Will you accept my friendship?
Now hold up. Here's the point we pinned at the beginning of this review. Why in the world is Twilight surprised that Nightmare Moon / Luna is Celestia's sister? Twilight clearly had to know that the one and only pony to raise both the sun and the moon was her mentor, Princess Celestia, who's over 1,000 years old. So if the pony from the legend was the one who defeated her sister and took over her sister's job of raising the moon, and if that pony is the one who has been raising the sun and moon for generations, then logically, the little sister from the legend was Celestia's little sister. See, this was a lack of deductive reasoning on Twilight's part. Twilight, sweetheart, you're supposed to be the smart one, who read all the books and knew more about Celestia than any pony. I could extend this disappointment to all ponies, as none of them seem to know that Nightmare Moon was Luna, who was Celestia's sister. Which I find weird, because most ponies know about the general story of Nightmare Moon, given Spike's comment about it being an old pony's tale, as well as given that there's an entire holiday themed around her. But I can forgive this oversight, as 1,000 years is a very long time, and it's easy to lose information or get information mixed up. Which is what clearly happened, as there are details about Nightmare Moon told during Nightmare Nights that is completely wrong about her. Information gets twisted, rumors spread, and the truth gets buried after years and years. With the pain of what she had to do haunting her, I can only imagine that Celestia didn't want to discuss her sister and just wanted Equestria to move on. So eventually, ponies would forget that their princess had a sister who ruled alongside her, only remembering twisted tales of the night a dark alicorn tried to take over the land and how their princess heroically rescued them. After so many years, they would never have the full story. Real accounts were recorded, though, as Twilight was reading one of them at the beginning of the show. But other than Twilight, who kept up with all that history? Not many ponies, I imagine. So, no, I'm not disappointed with the other ponies' lack of knowledge. Huge side-eye to Twilight, though, who read that information not 2 days before and still somehow was surprised. Now, I could make a comment about how Luna's design changes dramatically the next time we see her, but it's generally agreed upon that this is her powered down state, as she only looks like this because the elements of harmony temporarily drained her of a lot of her magic. There is an argument against this, though. We see Luna, as well as Celestia, get completely drained of their magic at least twice in the show, and never do they revert to this, with a lack of better term, basic state. So what gives? We know that it is an abundance of magic that makes the princess's manes as flowy and sparkly as they are, and without magic, their manes simply go limp. Is the Luna in Friendship is Magic Part 2 just a younger Luna and she ages into the Luna we're used to? Also no, because we see flashbacks of events 1,000+ years ago where she looked like typical Luna. Basic Luna may have been what Luna looked like as a filly or even a teen, but she's been quote-unquote typical Luna for over 1,000 years. So unless the elements of harmony temporarily de-aged her, her looking like this doesn't make sense. It only makes sense in the context of this episode because this is the very first time we even meet Luna and have no other expectations for what she would look like. She was simply designed to look like the pony from the storybook Twilight was reading, and nothing else. There's a decent chance that the character designers didn't even have Luna's official design conceptualized yet, so in that regard, it's fine. It's just that, in hindsight, it doesn't make sense. But that's what a lot of this review was about. Pointing out things that only retrospectively don't make sense. When watching the 2-part premiere for the first time, you have no idea who these characters are. You don't know what this world is. You're just in it for the ride. You're experiencing this world little by little and taking it all in the sequence the storytellers present it to you. And many people don't look back when going forward, so they may not notice some inconsistencies. It's only because I've seen the show from beginning to end in some capacity quite a few times that I'm able to notice certain things. Would it be cool to have a more updated pilot that is more consistent with the legitimized canon? Sure. Is it necessary? No. And many people, including myself, still see the first 2 episodes as charming and nostalgic and look back on it fondly despite the imperfections. And it really didn't need to be perfect. It just had to introduce this world and its characters to us. It did its job, and it did it well. This was the cornerstone that the empire of Friendship is Magic was built on, so we must appreciate it for what it is. Despite everything I spoke about, if I were to change anything about these 2 episodes, it would quite literally only be the part where the camera pans to each pony foreshadowing what their elements are. Everything else could stay the same and I'd be satisfied. No wait, also make Applejack's trial less awkward. Before we wrap up this review, can I just point out how actually brilliant this pilot is? I mean, I know I spent a while ragging on it, but like I said, it is still very charming. But beyond that, think about what these 2 episodes had to do. Reinvent My Little Pony. Lauren Faust was tasked with taking the My Little Pony IP and turning it into something new, something different. MLP already had its faction of fans, mostly little girls and the women who used to be little girls who grew up with a remaining fondness for it. But there was a stigma against MLP that it was too childish and girly and had no substance. I know I certainly had that bias against it, which is why I refused to watch the show when it first came out. And I can't say that these 2 episodes was my first exposure to this generation. They were not. My first episode was Season 1, Swarm of the Century. But looking back, I see what awesome things this first episode was able to do and how it brought in so many new fans of all audiences. It introduces not only valuable lore right off the bat with unique artwork, no one was expecting that, but it also immediately introduced a villain with an awesome design. A villain? In MLP? What sorcery is this? And yes, I know now that previous generations did in fact have villains, but myself and most others who weren't/aren't into MLP never would have guessed that. And I know for a fact that many people were shocked at the punishment of banishment to the moon. This gets the audience thinking, maybe My Little Pony is more exciting than I thought it was. And then we finally see Twilight. We see the drastic art style change from the previous generations. Less leaning towards anatomical accuracy and more towards a bouncy, expressive, anime-ish cartoon aesthetic. Oh, this show is pleasant to look at. And then the theme song occurs. It brings you in with this false sense of, with a lack of better terms, girly fluffiness. But then boom! It hits you with a faster tempo and more complex pop rock instrumentals. Oh my goodness, is My Little Pony actually awesome? But surely, this show that is called Friendship is Magic must be super corny and preachy, right? Everyone, except the villain, is all about love and rainbows? Wrong again! Our main character Twilight is not a fan of friendship and wants it as far away from her as possible, subverting expectations for the win! Twilight sort of serves as the stand-in for the watcher first experiencing MLP. With the idea of a corny friendship-filled show already on the brain, I can see how Twilight would be a refreshing character. Even her not being okay with Pinkie singing Giggle at the Ghostly at first was very clever. And as Twilight gets more and more open to the idea of friendship, so does the viewer. Twilight helps the audience get more comfortable with the themes and other aspects of this show, and that is just so smart. And when we get snippy Twinkleshine, we learn that the ponies are allowed to express a wide range of feelings and emotions and are not all okay with one another. Spike's existence shows us that dragons exist in this world, which makes the audience curious as to future implications of this. And we also have slapstick. Mild comedic cruelty? In MLP? Surely you jest. But nay, I do not jest. And don't get me started on the range of personalities with the main 6. It's just too scandalous in the best way. I could go on, but you get the point. This pilot was fighting an uphill battle, and it ended up winning. It was the start of an experience that brought in a wider audience than what could have ever been anticipated. Inconsistencies or not, this pilot is awesome. It's nowhere near my top 10 episodes of the show or even one of my favorite premieres, but it's still awesome and I respect it immensely. I love My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, and I can only talk about it to such length because of the love I have for it, and I hope that you got a kick out of my pastel pony ramblings. So now that you've heard my thoughts, what are yours? How do you feel about My Little Pony? Have you seen Friendship is Magic? Did you notice some of these inconsistencies? Comment below with your thoughts and the unicorn emoji, and let's get this conversation started. And remember, I'm the artistic Ailabelle. I review things, I rant sometimes, and rewrite stories occasionally. If If you enjoyed this video, I'd super appreciate it if you subscribed and joined our family of bells. We also have a chill Discord server if you ever just want a place to hang out. The link to that is in the description below. But as for now, that's all there is. There isn't any more.